to meet you, even though we're not. In a way, we are. I'm so glad you're here. And I am going to take us through what I believe and research tells us is a foundational lifestyle modality. In other words, what we have found, what epidemiology has found, and what science has found to be the way that we can keep ourselves most healthy. And as we get older, and boy, have we seen this with the pandemic, as we get older, those of us who are in better shape are able to get through difficult times, but also life is just a lot more fun when we are capable of getting through little things and really big things. And that takes good, solid health to do that. So I'm going to take you through a PowerPoint, but I'll tell you a little about myself. I'm about maybe it's 4 weeks away from turning 70. And I'm celebrating my 70th birthday with my first book. And that will be launched on January 9th. But in the meantime, my book title, Aging Powerfully, is what has become my mission. And I'll tell you more about that later. And it has because our American life expectancy has gone down each of the last 3 years. The expectancy for a man is 76.6, for a woman is 81, and that's really not great. In many and I'm going to be introducing the idea of blue zones. In many of the blue zones, actually in all of the blue zones, 80s and 90s are still vigorous ages. People are living into their 100th birthday and beyond, and still able to watch grandchildren, do their own shopping, get around on their own. And with lifestyle modalities that I'll go over, and it's simple stuff, we can extend our life by decades. And that's what the people in the blue zones have done. And that may be epidemiology, but which means that it's the experience of the people as opposed to something in a petri dish. There have been plenty of research papers that have backed up everything that they have shown us. So I'll take you through a slide presentation that way. But a few years ago, I had my own health crisis. I made the mistake of getting on board paleo and ketogenic diets, so heavy meat, heavy fat, thinking that that was one way to guarantee against diabetes and other things. And within a half a year, my blood pressure was up. I was pre-diabetic with a fasting blood sugar of about 119, which is very high, and well, pre-diabetic high, and my cholesterol was in the 230s. And I knew I had chosen the wrong path. I was working on my certification as a health coach, and so I looked at every um, dietary plan and every dietary evidentiary study there was, and came up with something that, again, I saw over and over, including the World Health Organization and the American Cardiology, College of Cardiology recommending, and uh, many organizations began to recommend more and more and more the idea of adding far more plants to our diet and cutting out the animal products, the animal fat, and cutting down on protein. We eat way too much protein in this country, and I'll talk a little about that, even though that's not what my talk is about. But that's what I did. I began to cut out animal products. I began to change my diet. I was then working as a consultant, health coach, integrative nutrition health coach with Lifestyle Medical here in Riverside and in Redlands, California. And one of the pillars of health with Lifestyle Medical is a plant-based whole food, and I'll talk about what that means and what that looks like. Whole food, plant-based um, eating and dietary plan did that adopted all of the pillars of health that we talk about with lifestyle medicine. Fasting blood sugar went down to 81. Cholesterol went down to 145. And if you've ever had these tests, you know those are stellar numbers. Blood pressure stays at about 106 over 60 something. And at 70, the only thing I'm on is something that came about because of an autoimmune situation, which was Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so I take a tiny bit of levothyroxine, and that's for the thyroid. But other than that, I take no other medications. Exercise an hour and a half to 2 hours every day, and that's walking and riding and going up the side of a mountain that's near us. And so I'm as healthy as I've been, healthier than I've been in a long, long time, and intend to stay that way. And that's what happened 6 months, well, I'll say in July of this year, when I began thinking about passing the word on in a way that people would understand, and began to write my book. I thought, I'm going to put these things down on paper. I've had 2 years of experience knowing that I could age backwards to a degree by simply changing a few things in my life and paying attention to other things that are really important. And it's made all the difference. I'm married. I was actually married for 40 years. My husband passed away with esophageal cancer. That was very tough. And a couple of years later, I met another wonderful gentleman and surprised myself and got married again. And it's been 8 years now. And he and I, fortunately, believe the same thing and do the same thing. So it's fun to have somebody, a buddy, that we move with, that we exercise with, that we eat similarly. And he's had the same results. He looks terrific. He is, all of his numbers are fabulous, and he's almost 70 as well. So let's jump right into our training, and then we'll have questions at the end. So write down any thoughts that you may have, anything that you want to ask about, and let's get on our PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get rid of something on my screen so that I can, there, see it. Okay. Aging Powerfully. I chose that as a name for my book because we're going to age. We all are, but we're going to age weekly. And by weekly, I mean as we enter our 50s and the numbers start looking worse and we start getting medications and we start feeling pains everywhere. We're looking at a declining line of health and a declining line of abilities. And that's not what we could and should be doing. My idea is to age, because I'm almost 70 within, as I said, a few weeks. My idea is to age powerfully into our 70s, 80s, 90s, and even beyond by making good choices and attaining, because of those good choices, vigorous health, balance, and joy for decades to come. If you think that way, if you believe that's what you want, you're willing to do what it takes to make it happen. And I hope I can be helpful today with some recommendations. Okay, there I am holding the book that will be out in January, although we'll probably have a December pre-sale. And we're going to talk about living like the world's healthiest people, because those are the people that the National Geographic magazine, with the help of Dan Buettner, who did a sociological study that lasted almost 10 years, isolated and defined as the longest living communities in the world. They include the Nagoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, and Icaria, Greece, and Sardinia, Italy, and Okinawa, Japan. And what I'm most proud of, and situated 15 minutes from my home actually, is the Seventh-day Adventist community in Loma Linda, California. And they live, that community, in the middle of a very commercialized area out just east of Los Angeles, um, they live an average of 10 years longer than most Americans. That's something to pay attention to. So Dan Buettner wrote his book called The Blue Zones. And people say, why does he call them blue? Because on the map, when they were going through the world on that 10-year study to find who the longest living people were with all the documentation that the National Geographics required, um, he used a blue pen to circle things on the map, and that's how that happened. Now, in his book, if you get his book, which I recommend, he talks about 9 commonalities that these areas possess. We're going to be talking about a few less than that, but what we consider to be the most adaptable and the most important. One of them, for example, that he recommends is having wine every day. I don't know that I'm going to recommend that. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means I'm not going to tell people to take up a glass for health. I don't think it's necessary. All right. So what are we talking about when we talk about those decisions that make a difference in our life? In summary, there are 4 items or 4 areas that we call the pillars of health in lifestyle medicine. And in the College of Lifestyle Medicine, they talk in general with different names for those pillars, but they include food, movement, community, and resilience, which means de-stressing and sleeping well. And we'll look at all of those. But as it relates to food, the College of Lifestyle Medicine and Lifestyle Medical general practices all over the country recommend the same thing. Eat whole foods. What are whole foods? They're not in packages, or at least very few are in packages. If you're buying beans, of course, it's in a package. But there's a big difference between the lentils that you buy in a package and lentil chips that have been highly refined, over salted, drenched in fat to be fried, and then put in a bag with a label that says healthy. So we're talking about whole food as close to grown as possible. And those whole foods are vegetables, fruits, beans, seeds, nuts, legumes or the beans, tubers like potatoes, and we'll look at what that looks like on your plate. Nutrient dense foods. Our body are made of organs and blood vessels and tissues and skin, etc. But one thing that few people know that much about, although it's become a huge subject since the American Gut Study was initiated and has put their findings out, and that's something we call the microbiome. It's something that a lot of people just summarize by calling the gut. The microbiome is almost like an organ. It's usually anywhere from, depending on the person, 3 to 6 pounds on an average of microbes. There are fungus, bacteria, even parasites. Most of them, or hopefully all of them, friendly, that are in our gut, mainly our intestines, but they're part of that is in our mouth, on our skin. We all have a body-wide microbiome that's different than anyone else's. But in your gut, the only thing that feeds your microbiome is fiber. It's the foods you eat, the whole foods you eat. Processed foods damage it because most of them have ingredients that they don't identify, they can't identify, and actually feeds the bad bacteria, or they nourish it with the foods that are as close to grown as possible. What the American Gut Project told us is that we want to have at least 30 different plant foods a week for an ideal combination of microbiome or of the microbes. And then those microbes have everything to do with how healthy the rest of our body is because of what they do in our body with short chain fatty acids that and nitric oxide that affects the strength of our blood vessels. I could go on and on, but I won't. Just leave it at the generalization that the more plant foods you eat, the healthier your body will be, and that the microbiome has a lot to do with that. So select foods that contribute to your health rather than undermine it. I am a vegan, and I don't say that for the ethical um, uh, um, I'll say, I'm not saying that as an ethical decision. I'm saying that I do not eat any animal product at all, haven't for over 2 years. And again, I'm the healthiest I've been in decades and decades, but that's not what I'm recommending you need to do. But if you did, if you said, you know what, I know I can reverse my diabetes with a whole food plant-based diet. I know I can bring my cardiovascular numbers down. I can get off my cholesterol medicine with a whole food plant-based low fat diet. That doesn't mean no fat. Avocados have fat, olives have fat, soy has fat, but we're not just adding it in by the bottle. This is what it looks like: fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes and seeds and nuts, and some additional supplements that make a difference that we don't get in our food on its own, like vitamin B12, and then plenty of sunshine for your vitamin D. And keep an eye on the omega-3s. But that's all I'll say about that part. But what does that look like? Well, that's like oatmeal in the morning. That's like wonderful stacks of whole grain pancakes with fruit on them for breakfast. That's, as with our chief medical doctor at Lifestyle Medicine, that could be beans and greens for breakfast. That's what he happens to love in the morning: beans and greens. And whatever you get used to eating, you relish. We don't have to have sweet cereals. As a matter of fact, Americans are one of the few in the world that eat sweets for breakfast as opposed to savory. Some, for example, in Asia, they eat savory. They'll have soups and they'll have rices and they'll have greens, mainly sea greens. And every country, for example, in the Middle East, will have beans and grains for breakfast. Okay, salads. What does that look like? That looks like plates full of the deepest, best looking combination of greens like arugula and bok choy and chard and kale. And again, I could go on and on. Start a meal with these and it helps fill you up. But just as important, raw leafy greens, again, feed the microbiome, give us nitric oxide and nutritional elements that you're not going to find in even other vegetables. So every day, have a great big salad. That's part of whole food plant-based. Then, again, we can go into salads and salad type meals that aren't even part of or founded on a base of greens, but are just as filling. If you wrap this up and eat it as a burrito, it's about as tasty as you can get, and yet it's full of the nutrition that we need for any meal. Grains. Grains can be put together as a side dish, as a main dish, again for breakfast. And this one is a curried rice dish, absolutely delicious and filling, and the olives add a nice fat to it, and the tomatoes add additional vitamins. And then these are a couple of examples of the meals that I have. This is a big flattened out baked potato with lentils on the left, with lentils and chopped cilantro and beet greens next to it. On the other plate, it's Brussels sprouts and rice and beans and salsa. Absolutely delicious meal. And if you're getting the picture that this is a heavy starch diet, yes, it is. Whole food, plant-based, but the starches are what keep you really, really satisfied. So when we shop, the best place to be in the store is in your fruits and vegetable aisle, and then getting the grains and beans and seeds and nuts to go along with a meal and nourish yourself with some of the most beautiful food on the planet. Hari Hashibu, what does that mean? The Okinawans, the Asians, the Japanese will use this as a mantra at the beginning of the meal. It means eating to less than full. And what has come to be defined as 80% full. Now, how do you know that? Well, you know what full is. You probably experienced it at Thanksgiving. And you'll know what less than full is when you stop eating, when you know you could eat more, but you don't because you don't want that feeling. You're getting close to Hari Hashibu, to getting in the habit of not getting overly full. What we tend to do and have done on Western diets is we've supersized everything. And in a way, we don't know what it's like to push away a meal before we're overly full because things have been supersized. And the problem with that is that Americans, as well as those in England, because of our dietary practices in that way, the English are have the highest body mass index in Europe, and Americans have the highest body mass index in North America, and it's making us sick. It's making us ill. So what we want to do based on that information is not overeat, not indulge in processed foods or very, very little, and then take in those fruits and vegetables to fill you up, and then the starches and the seeds and nuts for flavor and to fill you up as well. All right, purpose. We looked at food. Now, one of the things that has been shown to keep us alive a lot longer than one would expect is something as simple as purpose, knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, knowing while you're alive. One of the reasons I wrote my book was because I decided I wanted purpose beyond my 70s. And I have that purpose by looking at the challenge to not only for myself, but help others reach into those later decades, not fearing that we're getting older, but celebrating it. We're doing it with purpose to either help with the younger generation, or as this doctor, Dr. Warham, at 91 was still doing heart surgeries, and that kept him going into his decades. And then moving more becomes one of the mantras of those of us who know that in order to keep what we have as far as movement, we better keep it going. Move in ways that are natural. For example, engage in gardening and playing with friends. Cycling is a great sport. Dancing, exercising. This is Marge Jetson. She is a Seventh-day Adventist. She walks every day, rides her bike, lifts weights, and she's 100 years old in this photo. This happens to be a photo from our Mount Rubidoux here in Riverside. And I'm with my husband up that mountain at least 3 or 4 times a week to enjoy the view, but in addition to that, for the exercise. And it makes a big difference. And that's the bike path that we are on down below the mountain. And that's what we do when we're not on the mountain, we're riding our bikes. Downshift, stress relief makes a huge difference along with sleep. A lot of people think that it's fun, maybe even funny. We did this a lot when we were younger, to pull, as they call, pull an all-nighter, or stay up too late to watch a show, even though we know we have to get up early. That is damaging to our brain, and it is damaging to our body. We need an average of 7 to 8 hours of sleep, because that's when our bodies regenerate, and that's when our autonomic system, instead of being in fight or flight mode, can be in rest and digest. And that's where all of the health parameters come in, where cellular regeneration takes place, and even our brain at night while we're sleeping cleans out the old amyloid plaque and strengthens our synapses. How do you de-stress? Take in nature, enjoy your garden, let somebody help you relax. I don't know that we're getting massages these days. That's so sad, but someone at home can do that for you. Meditate. do yoga, sit and focus, downshift, and take deep breaths. Sunrises and sunsets, and just doing absolutely nothing. Loved ones are part of what we call community, and so is our tribe. What does that mean? That means the people in our lives will keep us young longer. And it's been actually proven with patients who were ill and patients who had somebody and those who didn't. Those that had somebody in their life were the ones that were able to pull through the most serious illnesses and had a reason to make that happen. And that had everything to do with the people in our lives. And we can go out of our way to remain connected with people when we know this, but also when we are feeling isolated as we do right now, possibly with COVID, just reaching out because it's good for them, it's good for you, it's also good for your body. This is Judy Goodman, 102 years old. I've known her for 45 years now. And if you can't find a person, consider a dog or a pet or a bird or a fish, something that takes care of you, that knows you're around and is glad for it. So in summary, relaxation, nutrition, exercise, love, and then that all important purpose. Take care of yourself, know who you are, dress up every day to make you feel that that day is worth entering. Laugh your head off, love life and love being alive and have fun with it. Know that there's something higher than you, something that is more important than anything that we're going through right now that will ultimately make everything okay. And simply let it off your shoulders and give it away to the universe. That is my back end with my grandkids. And that's the end of our presentation. I'm about to take questions, but I just want to tell you again who we are. I'm with Lifestyle Medicine in Riverside, California, not a typical doctor's office, because we are in the belief that when you walk in the door, we're trying to make you whole with lifestyle modifications. And for that reason, we treat the entire patient to get you off of medications, to stop the procedures and make you as healthy as you can be using your own body, as Hippocrates said, using your own body to make you well. And with a reminder of another thing he said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Do we have any questions?
And just want to remind you, you can unmute yourself. In the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little microphone. You just hit that button, or you can type in the bottom, it says chat, in the chat box. Well, I have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
What would you recommend right now, in this age of COVID? Top 3 things that seniors who are home right now, what are the top 3 things that they can do to kind of get through this season that we're in, and get started on that path of aging powerfully?
All right. Number one, don't let, if you can, don't let the loneliness or the fear or the anxiety lead you down a path that will make you ill, especially with food. Stock up on things that nourish your body because you need the strength. Stay away from the packaged food that is highly salted, highly sweetened, and full of oils, and get as close to nature as possible. Fill up a fruit bowl that you look at. And when you're feeling a little anxious, pick up an apple, cut it into little pieces, and take one bite at a time, as if it's a bowl of potato chips. That kind of a picture I want you to embrace. Number two, you've got to stay moving. You have to keep moving, even if it's chair aerobics that you take class for from, let's say, one of the senior centers here in the Inland Empire. We have the Goski Center. They have chair aerobics classes for free. They have laughing yoga classes for free. Something to keep you moving so that your body doesn't get weak, and the blood flow and the lymphatic flow doesn't become stagnant. That's major. And then third is stay away from stress as much as you can. It's so easy to get caught up in, I was going to say, the reality. Some of it, you can't tell if it's reality or not, but to get caught up in the I'm going to just leave it at the climate. I'll call it political or not, but the climate of fear and anxiety that watching the news will stir up. And as much as you can, direct your attention to things that are fun and funny and gratifying. And oh, speaking of gratification, every day, every single day, that's 4 now. Make up a gratitude list. Just start your morning. Thank you for this day, and list what it is you're grateful for, because that will keep you thinking in terms of what we have rather than what we don't have. Any other question?
Nan, are you able to see the chat box?
Yes, I am. Let me see what that is.
Loud.
Okay, I'm 93, very active. Oh, Cynthia, good for you. You love sugar. Try to curtail the amount. Thank you for all your insights. Yes, please try to curtail the amounts, because sugar, if you want sweetness, try dates. Try the natural foods that have vitamins, minerals, and fiber, and that are not processed. The more sugar you have, the more you want. And the more you want that kind of a zing from your foods. If you cut back slowly and replace some of that with, there's something called date paste. You just grind up soaked dates in your blender. One cup of dates to a half a cup of water, and just make a paste of it. You can put a little of that on your oatmeal, or put a little more water if you want it a little looser, to sweeten things up. Try that, Cynthia. And then, are you available for appointments at Lifestyle Medical? Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, that last slide that I had, I should have read this to you, said that we would love to meet with you for a meet and greet, where you can see if we're a good fit for you. So I'll give you our phone number because it was on there, and it's Lifestyle Medical. There's an office in Riverside as well as in Redlands. And just a minute. The phone number is 951-742-7324. It was best decision I've made, and I've referred a lot of family to a Lifestyle Medical doctor, primarily ours, if they were in this area, because it's so refreshing not to have somebody to want to simply treat symptoms, rather than work with you to get off all meds altogether. Wouldn't cutting out meats like chicken and beef cause a deficiency? A lot of people worry about that. The most nutritious food on the planet are plant foods. You might be worried about protein. Your legumes and your seeds and your nuts and all vegetables, and not fruits so much, but all vegetables have protein in them. Probably the lowest source of protein is a potato, but there are a lot of other healthy benefits with the potato, and that's still 10% protein. So if you get enough calories on a whole food plant-based diet, you're going to get enough protein. And if you worry about that, for example, we have at Lifestyle Medical a dietitian whom our patients speak with if they worry about deficiencies for any kind of challenge they may have, like digestive issues and things like that. And there are a lot of good books on nutritious, whole food, plant-based diets. You don't want to just keep eating hamburgers, but throw the burger away and then eat the rest. It's still white flour, it's still processed. That's not what I'm talking about. That's why I redundantly repeat that term whole food and then plant-based. But that's a fair question, Patricia. Anybody else? All right. Well, I thank you for being here today. I hope that I've inspired you to believe that regardless of where you are in your health journey, if you look ahead with excitement and enthusiasm for the next 2 to 3 decades, that's what I'm doing. I would say join me on a movement, not to see our 70s, because that's where I am, as nearing the end of the line, but to see it as that last third or that third act, another 20 to 30 years. Why not jump on with both feet the bandwagon of aging powerfully? Thank you for being with me today. Again, my name is Nan Simonson.
Thank you, Nan. We appreciate your information. It was a very informative presentation. I will share your information in the virtual platform. So anyone who'd like her phone number that you provided, as well as the website information, I will provide that for them.
Terrific. And thank you, Toya. It was good to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.